Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's 6 sessions. It's that time of the week when I get to avoid doing my actual day job and get to hang out with some of the most innovative and outright interesting people in the growth space. And today, excitingly, I have one of Manchester's finest. In this digital age we all find ourselves in, where visuals drive narratives and attention spans are shorter than they've ever been, the role of motion graphics and animation has never been more pivotal. It can be the unseen magic, the art of storytelling without words, and the driving force behind capturing our imaginations. For marketers, it's an attention economy, and often motion graphics are the only way to grab hold of someone in that short span of time we have them for. But how does it fit into your revenue-driving growth plans? Our guest today has mastered the craft of bringing stories to life through motion, from iconic global brands to impactful charity initiatives, and he's transformed static ideas into dynamic masterpieces. Today, we'll journey into the world of Motion Graphics Studio, tearing up the creative scene, an agency that over the past 16 years has evolved into a beacon of creative excellence. But this session isn't just about visuals. It's about the heart of a business, the ethos of collaboration, and the role of community in fostering talent. We're going to explore how you can stand out in a world saturated with content, the challenges and triumphs of starting, growing, and scaling an agency, and the future of motion graphics in this ever-evolving AI buzzwording landscape. From Manchester's creative events to the intricacies of motion graphics in business growth, today's guest is going to leave us all just that little bit smarter. And perhaps he'll even share the secrets behind creating content that not only captivates, but resonates. If you're passionate about standing out in a crowd, agency life, or just how you can bring a bit of motion magic into your growth plans, then brace yourself for the next 45 minutes-ish. As always, our conversations will probably not be concise, but should be full of insight. And of course, it's completely unfiltered, but hopefully not career-ending for either James or I. Joining us from Manchester, it's my pleasure to introduce you to James Torry, founder and creative director of DoodleDo. James, welcome.
Rich, mate, what an intro. I wasn't expecting that, but it's great to be here. It's even better
honestly,
to be here now.
I pride myself on these. It's my favorite part of the week. My favorite part of these interviews is just writing these because they make me laugh the whole way through. And then
you could be my hype man from now on.
Absolutely. That is the missing piece in my career, is just being a generalist hype man. I'm in. All right, so first up, how has Q3 been for DoodleDo?
Well, I suppose you put it
sharp intake of breath there.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that because Q3 is looking good actually, and
nice.
I get the sense that things are dialing back up, and but if I'm honest, it's against the backdrop of probably the weirdest year in our 16 years. Like, pipelines have felt shorter, lead times have felt longer, decision makers seem to sort of dither a bit more, and I suppose that breeds an element of uncertainty. And I suppose after 16 years, you get used to kind of enjoying a bit of downtime. But now I think we're starting to see some of the best opportunities we've ever been presented with happening right now. And we've just been fortunate enough to be awarded a contract that's probably in our top 3 ever.
Is it the out-of-home one that we've just put across?
Well, I hope so. No, it wasn't. But yeah, so I'm excited about what's coming after, I think it's fair to say, a sort of, if not turbulent, uncertain year. And yeah, I'm excited about what might happen next.
Strong Q4 planned. I think like we've seen same. So like we've had like peaks and troughs throughout the year, extended sales cycles, but the deal size is growing, but a lot of that is kind of, it feels like it's building to a crescendo in Q4, because a lot of those sales cycles will be coming to a natural conclusion in Q4, and we're also starting to see a lot more of the CFO entering into the sales process nowadays as well. So it's a new dynamic.
Yeah, and along with it as well, like, I know we'll probably get onto this later, but sort of new ways of working, and we're slightly diversifying some of, and not really by design, but just by the connections we're making and things like that. We're exploring other areas of in our sector, and it's all good fun.
Good. It's all about having fun. So what
Yeah,
is
it is.
what is DoodleDo and what is your role?
Well, most of what we deliver is ultimately video and or animation. So I suppose it's easy for us to end up looking like a production company where we take other people's ideas and make them happen. But the bit I really love is the ideas bit and the creative and the strategy stuff behind all of that stuff. So where I've landed for now in articulating who we are is that we're a video-led creative agency. And I suppose my role is really about assembling the best team and then finding the best clients for that team to work for and putting them together and letting the magic happen, as well as, like any founder, making the brews, fixing the toilets. And
Are you still the IT guy as well? Because I'm still the IT guy.
No one wants me to be the IT guy. but I come alive with the big ideas. Like that's the bit for me in my role. Yeah.
How did you get into motion graphics? Can you walk me through the early parts of the career?
Yeah, I mean the early parts are going back some time now, but I grew up in Sheffield. I moved to Manchester in '99 for uni to essentially do something like graphic design.
That's the treble year, wasn't it?
Well, it might be if you weren't a Sheffield Wednesday fan, yeah. But yeah, and in those days, we still had designated rooms for the internet. You had to go to a space that had internet. We had hospitality venues called internet cafes, and so the web really was in its infancy, and I got sucked into that world really, and I started paying my way through uni by doing that. I'd email people who had bad websites, which was everybody then, and just redesign the homepage and say, do you want it to look like this? And most people said yeah. And I think I was charging like 200 quid or something. But that was like a month's rent. So, and then I'd deliver it. I'd also then hand it in for my coursework. And my tutors didn't really know what to do with it because we weren't a web design course. But they kind of knew this thing was coming. So I ended up by smoke and mirrors doing really well at uni with that stuff. But in that process, I remember coming across this website that was built entirely in Flash. Do you remember Flash Macromedia?
I remember Flash well.
And it just, to me, it was like witchcraft. It was just magical things moving, and you could create animations and you could create buttons and they'd do different things when you rolled over them. And it was just like mind blowing to me at that point. So I got really excited. Like every website seemed to have an animated intro at that point that you could skip. And but that was my intro to animation. And when I graduated, they asked me to come back and lecture. So while I was started building my own thing, I was lecturing and I was also volunteering somewhere else. But that was how I got into moving image, really, from a graphic design background.
So I'm always interested when I speak to agency owners. I'm always interested in understanding how you got to that point, because let's be honest, running an agency is not the easiest career choice somebody can make. So how did DoodleDo become a thing?
Well, so I'd graduated. I carried on doing mainly web stuff, but the Flash stuff was what really I enjoyed doing. And I was in I was at an awards ceremony in Budapest that I'd done the graphics for in Flash, and it was kind of it just was cool the way I'd done it. But they played this video at the start that was like a compilation of all the previous year's awards, and it was terrible. But I remember speaking to the guy. I was like, "Oh, what do you pay for that?" And he said, "Oh, I think we paid $5-6 grand, something like that." My jaw hit the floor. I never conceived that amount of money for, I was there for the weekend for about 300 quid. And then, so I just said, I thought I don't know anything about video, but I know I could do a better job than that. I didn't say that to him, but I just said, can I pitch next year? And he said, oh, I didn't know you did video. And I just said, oh, yeah. And sure enough, he was true to his word. He let me pitch. And so I rang a mate who worked at Man United TV, hated football. So it wasn't the greatest job for him, but he was really talented, knew everything about video, had worked in broadcast before that. I didn't know anything. So I just said, look, there's this thing. Do you want to collaborate on it? And we did, and we won it. And then slowly a few more jobs through the stuff I was doing in web would come that had video elements to them, and we'd collaborate, and we kept doing that until 2007. BBC Two got in touch, and we had this opportunity for to create a title sequence for BBC Two's flagship summer documentary series on British film. And it was such a brilliant job. And we did this title sequence and all the graphics for the show. And the BBC just really, at that time, didn't really work with freelancers. They wanted to work with entities. And we'd been talking about whether we set up or not. And the long and short of it was that if we were ever going to do it, this was what to do it off the back of. And so we did, and we formed DoodleDo Motion, as it was then, because DoodleDo was kind of this web thing, and which goes back to, by the way, the time when everyone started getting websites and just put online next to their name. So I was Doodle Design Online, which is the DO. So we had DoodleDo, and DoodleDo Motion was the sort of video motion stuff. And honestly, I remember just that going live, that BBC Two show, and the excitement of seeing your stuff on proper telly, and then seeing your credits roll at the end, which to be honest, I still get excited about. But yeah, it was just such a great feeling. And that was the first ever project for DoodleDo.
And how many times since then to now have you questioned your life choices as an agency loaner?
Oh man, how many times a day?
Fine.
Oh, how many? Yeah. Well, so when it's good, it's great, isn't it? When it's not, it's tough. But that's the life we choose.
So coming on to more of the content side, with how easy it is to now create content, so things like Canva, AI, user-generated content, how do you get good content and the messages in that content to stand out now? Because it's a crowded space now.
Yeah, I think, these are all tools. And, I have Microsoft Word, but it doesn't make me an author. You can put a guitar in my hands and it doesn't make me Jimi Hendrix. So there's
but in the same guise though, it does. I can drown out the noise of a good song at the same time. If that kind of makes so. Using the guitar analogy, you could be sat in the corner of a room playing a good song, and I can be sat playing something terrible. But you're not going to hear the good song throughout that noise, and that's kind of the point I'm making is how do you get something to stand out?
Well, I think there's an element of either being really good or really bad, and is both good, and mediocre is the worst thing, right? So there's something in that. But I remember that there was an advertising agency, and I can't remember, I wish I could remember the name of them, but I remember their website didn't have any finished work on it. Just their whole portfolio you couldn't find any finished work on it. And all it had was little scamps, we call them scamps, but little sketches, might be little mood board type things, and on Post-it notes. And that's all they had. And the point was, if the idea is good enough, it'll translate however you make it. And of course we'll make the best TV ad that you've ever seen. But fundamentally, is the idea good or bad? And I think there's that, because then you've got a question, how are you defining good content? Are you talking about production value, or which a lot of these things essentially have lowered the barrier to entry on production value, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's good ideas behind them, or there's good strategy behind them, or that they engage in the right way with the right people. So I think then it's about defining what good content is, and what you want to see from it. So is it content that generates lots of views? Is it engagement? But then what type of engagement? Is it engagement that actually leads to sales, or some kind of behavior change, or is shareable? So then once you've defined those parameters, then you can figure out how the kind of content you're going to need, and who should deliver it, and what platform it should be on, and how long it should be. And so then I think it then sort of doesn't matter whether you make it on Canva, AI, UGC, whether you're filming in a studio or whatever else, because we will take a brief, and sometimes our conclusion is that you should do it yourself and not use us, because that is the best use of budget and spend for those parameters that we've just discussed. Or we're often on a journey with a client where we're setting some parameters for how stuff should look, and then we're helping them bring it in the house.
At what point do you normally get involved? So you mentioned a brief there. So do you have clients come to you saying, I need to achieve this? So like, I have this growth, I need to generate X revenue. Or is it more likely like somebody will come to you with more of an idea that you then need to flesh out? So I want to have, so I think we came with an idea saying this is roughly what we're trying to achieve and the message we're trying to go to. And then your team came back with suggestions around what the messaging was, which was way better than what we had come up with. And then suggestions around animation and things. What stage do you normally get involved in? And can you get involved in?
Well, we can get involved in any stage, and the sooner the better. But for us, but usually the inquiry goes something like, we need a video. And then you start interrogating, well, why do you need a video? And I suppose often the two sort of main questions are like, what do you want someone to do next? So, okay, they've watched the video, but then why, what's in your head that you need them to do that means you've come to us and said you want a video? So is it that there's a call to action, and do we want them to visit the website, pick up the phone, fill in the form, go somewhere else, and just be more aware? And then the second question is, or watch another video, or, the second question is then, how will you know we've done a good job? And that's usually about defining success. So, is it number of views? Is it conversion rates? Is it lowering attrition rates? And that can be very, very wide. And typically we'll ask for, or start to define, a bit of a customer journey. If it is a customer journey, sometimes we're talking internal comms, and it's about employer brand, and we're wanting to attract talent and retain talent, and so that's a different kind of journey. But we're still defining a journey. What are the friction points? Where do we see drop off and attrition rates, and how can we use video, or where's the most appropriate places to use video and animation and other assets that we can create that address some of those friction points and those attrition rates, and smooth the process? Like, how do we give meaning and story to some of these barriers so that we lower the barriers and we create a compelling reason to continue down the journey?
What is your favorite ever project you've ever worked on?
Oh.
I told you we'd go totally off piste.
Yeah. What's my favorite ever project? I have a few, but the one that springs to mind that was just the most fun was we were asked to pitch for rentalcars.com came to us and a few other agencies with a pot of money. So we've never done brand advertising. Not sure it's for us, but we've never tested it. So let's have a go. Most of their stuff's direct response or pay-per-click or that sort of thing. So we pitched a number of ideas, but one of them, it was just after Jeremy Clarkson had left Top Gear and started doing the Grand Tour. So we came up with the Grand Tour, which was 3 old ladies who were grannies, putting them in a car and taking them on a road trip. And then, the idea was that rental cars is not about getting from A to B, because you can do that loads of ways, but it's about the journey in between and being able to go off piste and do all this stuff. So we put 3 old ladies from Salford, who one had the most travelled, who genuinely thought she was Judith Chalmers, was she kind of been to Benidorm a few times. One had not got a passport and had never travelled, and the other had sort of safely travelled, but not really, the sort of person who goes anywhere in the world and finds the Irish pub, and had never had foreign food, in her words, which would include garlic bread and things like that. So we took them on this road trip to Barcelona, Spain, and we started in Barcelona. And honestly, from the moment they got in the car, they crashed it. But after that, it was just the most fun. So we turned this corner, and this beautiful palace in Barcelona that has these glass domes on the top, and June in the back, she just goes, "Oh my God, look at that. Isn't that beautiful?" And the other lady says, "Oh man, it is just like the Trafford Centre," which, for those of you who are not from Manchester, is like our shopping centre here, which is not the height of culture necessarily. But from them, we just knew we had gold, and they just were like teenagers enjoying this place. We took them skydiving, hot air ballooning, making paper mache festival heads, sampling food. It was just a blast, and it went viral. We had, like university students kind of consuming this stuff and creating memes from these people and just saying, if this is not us when we're 80, then we'll want words. We had Booking.com then took it off rental cars, and we started doing some work for Booking.com with the same series. We got commissioned for Turkey, went to Turkey and filmed, and that was incredible, unbelievable. And they were turning the season on for us and giving us access to UNESCO sites, and honestly, it's just ridiculous. I remember interviewing one of the grannies when we got back, and for some backstory really, and I said, "What's your proudest moment?" And her proudest moment was her son going to university, first one in the family that had ever gone to university, and the second proudest moment was doing the Grand Tour. She just said, "I thought I was living, but this was something else." So, and just the crew and the bond you make and everything else, it was just so much fun. And we even had, Channel 4. We were in talks with Channel 4 about turning it into a TV show, and it was just a brilliant idea, and everything about it was fantastic fun, and that just really came across.
And one of the things I'm most fascinated with stuff like that is how did you get to the idea? I know there was the Grand Tour, and that was kind of the backbone, but how did you go from that to the Grand Tour? Like, what was there a creative process, or was it like one of those shower moments? You were like, that's a good idea. Like, how did you get to that point?
Well, a bit of both. Like I said, we'd sort of kicked around the idea of, well, what does rental cars enable that everything else doesn't? And it was that kind of autonomy and the flexibility and the agility, and so we kind of, I don't think we ever played this back, but internally we'd said, right, we would position them as like advocates for adventure. That was our phrase for them. And we came and we knew we were up against everybody else in the process was a big ad agency. So we knew we were up against it, but we also knew they'd probably just all talk about themselves. So we took the decision that we were there on merit. They'd already done that bit. And so we'd talk about them. And we were probably over-pitched, to be honest. We pitched like 10 ideas. And I thought there was some that were better than that. But
clients never choose the idea that you like best. It's
no.
absolute verbatim.
And all I had was one slide on each idea that I'd mocked up a visual for. And we just talked them through what each of these ideas. Some of them had much bigger scale, and some of them were small. Some of them were just one-off stunts. And I later found out that before we left the building, they had registered the domain name. So it just resonated with the right person at the right time. But yeah, there was a creative process, and it was along those lines of tying in what was in the zeitgeist and what was going on around and what was happening, what we'd established we want. And it turned out some of the other agencies had said, you're all about getting from A to B. That's not what you are. So yeah, we had good rationale and good ideas, and fortunately they took a risk on us, because they probably shouldn't have, in truth. It was a crazy idea, but we pulled it off.
So over the last 16 years, you guys have created content for some of the most recognizable brands in the world. But how do you guys stay at the sharp end? Like what sets DoodleDo apart from what is like, there's quite a, particularly in Manchester, quite a crowded scene in like motion. Like there's a lot of like film shops, animation shops, things like that. How do you stay at the front of that and make sure you're delivering great work for clients?
Yeah. So there's probably two parts to that question. There's the crowded space, crowded industry bit, and then there's the staying at the sharp end. I tend to think that crowds are quite fun places to be, generally, aren't they? Like you're with loads of people in a crowd. You're with loads of people who tend to be into the same thing as you are, by the nature that you've crowded, and so they probably think a bit like you and are turned on by the same things you are. And so I actually find the crowd like a fun place to be if you choose to view it that way. I was at Wembley watching Sheffield Wednesday get promoted in the summer, and I was hugging random people I'd never met, and crying with them. It was the last minute of injury time, of extra time, and so I just find crowds. If you're at a gig and you start talking to someone and you're there for the same reason, and it's a bit like that in our industry in Manchester. I think you're actually going to find more like-minded people than you're going to find enemies. So I try not to worry about it and just enjoy the fact that I'm in the crowd, and that it means Manchester's getting something right, because we're attracting all this talent and the talent pool, and we're kind of spurring each other on, all that sort of stuff. Then it's how do you stay at the sharp end of that and not get lost in a crowd? We kind of want to be crowd surfing, don't we? But not to stretch the analogy too far. But I think there's probably like, it's either in you or it's not, some of that stuff. And I think about my granddad he was a Sheffield cutler by trade, so he's had massive hands. He worked on grindstones, making knives and stuff in Sheffield. But he was a photography enthusiast. So growing up, there's always this. He had the dark room in his spare bedroom. So always this smell of those chemicals and that red light that went on. And it was kind of a magical process. But he, well into his 80s, he was subscribing to photography magazines. had a Nikon, like these Nikon DSLR cameras that he was buying. He was getting them converted into infrared, stuff that I don't even know about, but he'd read about, and so that he could enter weekly competitions in this magazine. And he wasn't brilliant. And then he'd be on Photoshop like at 85 or whatever, trying to, do this stuff. And contrast that with my grandma, who, like, I remember you'd go around on a Sunday, and when you'd leave, anything you need, grandma, anything you need this week, and she'd hand you the Radio Times, and she'd circled, which was, I don't know where our audience is from, but it was the listings of TV shows in the UK, and there was this thing called Video Plus. Do you remember that thing? So when you had a VHS player, you had a video. You had to set the time kind of 5 minutes before you knew the show was going to start, and 5 minutes after you knew it was going to end, just so you made sure you were recording the thing. And every adult passed the remote to the child in the household and let them get on with it. And then Video Plus came around, which gave a unique number to every TV show listing, and they'd put it in the Radio Times, and my grandma would circle it and just hand you the Radio Times, and you'd set up her recordings for the week. And I'm a bit, I think I'm 43 now, and a bit like my grandma. I'm aware.
That's not the answer I expected.
No, but there is an element of it where you've got to know which one you are. And I'm becoming more, I know what I'm good at. And I know there's other people who are better at the other stuff.
I got accused of being a boomer for not understanding. I can't even remember what the new piece of tech was, and it was like a knife to the heart, because I'd always been proud of the fact that I was kind of at the forefront of playing with new channels and tech. And I was like, I now genuinely feel old. It's not like the hurting my back just by sleeping kind of thing. It was like, that was the moment I was like, I'm an old man.
Yeah. But then you've got to accept that. And so I think the key for me is like, there's certain things I keep going at and I love, and there's certain things I'm just not that interested in. But I think the skill is in hiring enthusiasts, not just practitioners. But some of my guys, like, they're still producing their best work at home. Like, you'll come in the next day and they've produced something. Flipping heck, how did you do that? And they're playing with stuff all the time, and it's just in them to do it. And they want to get the latest bit of technology, they want to see how it works. Our Monday meeting, the first thing we do is things to celebrate. And I remember Mark, one of our video team seniors, his thing to celebrate this week was there's this thing that DaVinci Resolve has released this week, and it's a game changer. And he went into the technical stuff of it. And it doesn't light me up, I'll be honest, but I love that it lights him up. And I know how then that creates a wider palette for us all to use and play with. But I don't need to be the one. I've got three girls, and two of them are really into like ballet and performing arts, and one of them's really into netball. And I'm not great at ballet, but and I'm not that great at netball either. But I don't have to be better than them to champion their dreams for it. So I can lead them, and I can point the resources that I have to cover them and help them achieve what's in them to do. But I don't have to be better than them at ballet to lead them. And it's the same with some of these guys. Like, I'm hiring people who are better than me, and who are enthusiasts. And so when Mark lights up about the latest release of DaVinci Resolve because it's a game changer, I'm like, go for it, because that is on you to do. I can create the space for you to play. We can have the clients that are going to benefit from it, and I can lead without being in front of you. And so I think that's how you stay at the cutting edge and then we create space for passion projects. If we don't have a client for the piece of work that we're desperate to produce, then we'll produce the work anyway. And we play. So we're getting into 3D print. We just had two of the guys on 3D printing courses to see what, how can that happen. We've got guys exploring AI and how to use that. We've got virtual production and all of the stuff that Hollywood's doing that we're trying to drag into a sort of other sectors that don't have that kind of budget. And we're just constantly playing, and that's the joy of what we get to do. We play for a living. But I think that's how you get the best out of people and how you stay at the cutting edge of what's happening in our sector is hire people who are enthusiastic about it.
So on my next question, so unfortunately it's not always the convention, especially in the creative agency world, to lean more towards collaboration than competition. What's the story behind that becoming the mantra for DoodleDo? Because just so everybody understands, before I interview somebody, I ask you to send through a bio and like how you present yourself, and then I can go away and research and find things out. And the thing that stood out to me most was that whole point around a bit you personally, and now DoodleDo by kind of osmosis or default or kind of design. It's focused more on collaboration than competition, and I think like that it's a great mantra. But how did that become part of who DoodleDo are?
Yeah, well, it's probably why I respond to that crowd question in the way I did. But so 6 years ago, we turned 10. And I think I had a bit of a agency midlife crisis. You're sort of 10 years old and you're thinking, have we done anything? Like, have we achieved anything? Have we shifted the dial on anything? Would anyone notice if we
lasted 10 years? That is an achievement in itself.
Well, yeah, but I was dissatisfied, and probably more than that, I was starting to feel loads of people were emerging in Manchester doing similar things, right? And they're really good at it. And rather than, I suppose I just felt threatened to some degree. I'd look at a reel and think, oh, why haven't we done that? Like, we should have done that. Or I'd look at an event someone had hosted or a client win or something like that, and I'd just think, oh man, we missed out, or we should have got there first, or all of those kinds of things. And I suppose I was feeling threatened by it. And lots of people process stuff in different ways, and I have quite a strong faith. So my go-to is like prayer, not kneeling down, hands together stuff, but I kind of just a chat with the big guy, and so I found myself doing that, and this thought came into my head that I began to process, which was really something like, if we're all doing what we're born to do, then there must be space for us all to thrive at it. There must be a space where we all get to win if we're doing what we were created for. So, and I appreciate if you think you're self-made, that's probably a bigger stretch, but there isn't any part of me that thinks I'm self-made other than some of the mistakes I've made. But so that thought started to pervade, and I had to activate it, because I was still stuck in fear. So I just thought, what can I do? So I started liking other people's reels, and I started commenting and sharing them. I wrote a LinkedIn article it's probably the only one I've ever written, but it recommended 5 other agencies that I could think of that were doing great work in Manchester. And I got weird some people got in touch and was like, what are you doing? This is suicide. And I had other people get in touch saying, I love this. But none of that was the point, really. I just felt more peaceful and just felt like, number one, I can't handle all the work there is in Manchester, so I don't want it anyway. And their success doesn't take from me. So I just started celebrating, and we banned the word competition from our vocabulary in DoodleDo. And I said to the guys, if you get an opportunity to like another agency's reel, then please do it. Please encourage people. Please tell them they're doing a great job. Ask them questions, and since then, we have genuinely collaborated with agencies, and we work together on stuff, and we pass work between one another. And in some cases, employees have moved across, and that's been okay too. And in other ways, collaboration looks more like just sending a message saying, "Oh, good job on that client win." Or I've been in pitches, I've been in pitches when I've pulled out of pitches when I know they're already using a great agency that I know of. And I've also been in pitches where we're up against friends. And I've just said, you know what, you're spoiled for choice here. Like, they are brilliant and we are brilliant. So this is a win-win for you. And it just feels like a better space to live and breathe.
So I believe and love collaboration wholeheartedly. I believe we've built our entire business on partnerships. Like, so we're partnering with DoodleDo. Like, so you guys have when we have video work to do, because we know that it's not our strength, and there are people who are better at it. And I love collaboration, but my biggest driver is competing. It does not necessarily competition. It is competing. It could be against myself. It could be against like how we've previously done, all those kind of stuff. But that is my biggest driver. So I have this kind of weird, I love collaboration and I don't disagree with anything you've said. And I love the whole thing. But at the same time, I really like winning. Not in a way that I have to trample over people to do it, but like, and I'm not happy to lose, obviously, but I am comfortable with losing when I have to. But I think I'm in this weird space of I like collaboration, I like partnership, I like seeing us all win, but at the same time, I really like competing. But I would compete with myself in a paper bag.
Yeah, and I'm not. I probably have overstated the word competition. I think there's a healthy version of it, isn't there? Like why do you do training sessions? Why, when you sharpen each other that way. And I think really you hit on the nub of it. It's when that competition comes at the detriment to somebody else, or like for me, it was just how I felt. Like I knew I wasn't peaceful, and I wasn't loving everyone else's success. Honestly, I was threatened by it. Whereas now I love seeing people do well. Like, and because it doesn't feel like if they're doing well, then it means I do less well. It was an internal thing for me, really.
I really like the analogy of all boats rise with the tide. Like that is, if we are all succeeding, and you see it a lot in Manchester, is when everybody is succeeding, everybody is being elevated by that. And I think that is a very good thing. I wouldn't say it's necessarily just unique to Manchester, but I think it is prevalent in Manchester in the agency space as well. Obviously there's like outliers and things like that, but I do think on the whole, everybody is happy to see everybody succeed, and it's great.
Well, I think we are so fortunate in this city because we're big enough that we attract the talent, and it's such a thriving creative community, and people land here and they want to be here and they want to be rooted here because of that. But we're also small enough that you're not anonymous, and you can get to know each other, and you can, whereas when you're in London, it's just not the same. It's, yes, it's a vibrant sector, but do they all know each other? Not really.
I don't think I could have built what I built at Six and Flow in London. I don't think it would have happened.
Yeah, probably. I think we're really fortunate to be here, and I love it.
So you've launched a film bursary. Like, how does it support upcoming talent, and what inspired the initiative?
Well, it's sort of a similar theme, really. We got to 15, so we're 5 years on, and we're just so grateful. Like, we'd realized we were only here because of the kindness of others, whether that was clients who'd taken a risk on us, or friends who'd cheered us on, people who'd made referrals for us, or people who'd come and worked for us for whatever length of time and had given their all. And just felt, super privileged. We'd occupied this space. We'd got a base in Manchester, and I think there's something in the. I mean, I tiptoed around it, which I don't know whether there's the right thing to do or not, but there was a thing in the whole Black Lives Matter bit, of those sort of COVID years that really affected me. I spoke to some friends and had a bit of a gathering of friends, and I started to just be more aware of my own privilege and also just how they'd lived their lives, and I'd not really noticed, feeling like they had to work harder and smarter and to attain the same sort of stuff. So that was in there, and we did wonder about whether the bursary should be should target like BAME filmmakers. And the truth is, I chickened out because I thought we're going to get accused of virtue signaling or something. Yeah, so we just made it open to anybody. I'm not sure whether I regret that choice or not, honestly, Rich. But that's what we did, and but the heart of it, whoever it ended up being for, was that we'd give someone an opportunity in the vein that we'd been given opportunities over the years, and so we would lend some of our talent and the team's talent, some of our space, some money, and some advice to a up-and-coming filmmaker. And we went through this whole process and had some external judges as well. And we ended up with a young filmmaker called Ricky Allen. And so the film is going to be called The Wolf at the Door. And it's a really interesting story because Ricky's upbringing was in quite a lot of childhood poverty, but his story is of one of being told never to answer the door in case it was bailiffs. And so he literally would bury his toys in the garden just in case bailiffs came around and he didn't want his toys getting taken away. And so he has this real passion of this untold story of debt and bailiffs and debt collection, which the average, debt collection is in the few hundreds of pounds, but the psychological effect on kids in those families is untold. And so this film's going to tell some of that story in a really creative way. So I think he's brilliant. I think what he's trying to do is brilliant, and I'm really hoping we end up with not only a great film that helps a great filmmaker, but opens a conversation on some sort of bigger issues as well.
So it's more than. So actually, what you're talking about there is you're actually opening up more of like a social conversation, not just enabling somebody into a career in film.
Yeah, although by accident, that wasn't there's
no, grand design, yeah.
No, it was just like, oh wow, this film's incredible, and the story behind this film's incredible. You won the bursary, but it could have been a very thin, plot, and just a beautiful film and an incredible filmmaker that we'd supported. But it just happens that this particular film is in that space, which is going to be good.
And when's it released?
Probably early next year. Filming was meant to have been done, but it's been pushed back a bit. So yeah.
I look forward to every year. Weirdly, after the Inbound conference, I end up in Toronto seeing our Toronto team, and every year I always forget it's on. I land in the middle of Toronto Film Festival. So if it ends up being there, let me know.
I will for sure.
So with the rise of the gig economy and an increasing number of professionals turning to freelancing, how does DoodleDo work and grow with freelancers?
Well, we do with freelancers. We've got a network of really talented guys in Manchester and beyond that are photographers, filmmakers, sound ops. animators, musicians, voiceover artists. There's loads of ways that we plug into the freelance community, illustrators. And then when we're not working with them, we're kind of championing them, hopefully. And, so we've started these monthly events. And yeah, I just feel inspired. I think sometimes just getting freelancers in the building as well and working helps the team, because it's just a kind of freshens things up, and you can sort of get into a way of working that's yours, and then when someone else comes at it a different way, it kind of challenges you a bit. So yeah, we love it, and it gives us capacity when we need it as well, and just that sort of diversity of thinking creatively as well.
So this is a word that I am already not a fan of hearing anymore because it's everywhere. AI,
Okay.
good
Oh
thing
yeah.
or bad thing for the industry?
I think depending on your answer to that is probably a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think if you think it's a good thing, it'll be a good thing. If you think it's a bad thing, it'll be a bad thing. So I tend to think, I'm an optimist, so I tend to think that it will be another tool, and we'll find out how it can make the process of filmmaking better and more streamlined and more accessible, and we'll do incredible things with it, but we'll work with it and alongside it, and we'll adapt our practices accordingly. But I think if you probably think it's going to steal all our jobs and we'll be out of it, then it probably will. So we're giving license to our guys to test and learn and see what it does. The problem is we can't learn it as fast as it's evolving at the moment. Like we're working on a version, and then you're like, oh right, that solved all the issues. We'll just move over here. But it's kind of getting us in the headspace of how we might utilize stuff.
So my personal view on AI in general, particularly from like a market, like particularly from our space, but like looking at things like content, like written content production, like social media, those kind of things. My view on it has been from the beginning is that we're focusing on augmentation as opposed to replication. We don't want to replace the humans in that process. We want to make their jobs easier, faster, better. And the people focus on the strategy and the kind of the creative ideas, but also using things like a great example is writer's block, right? You can pump in a couple of ideas, have it spit out a couple of ideas that come back to you, and you take those, you mold them, and then you can develop it on from there. I think in your space, from an outside looking in, my thoughts on it I think it'll be very similar to something like when you had computer animation first coming into like film industry as well, because I think that would have ruffled a few feathers in people thinking they were going to lose jobs, but actually there ends up being a space for both. In the same way in photography, you have some film purists and digitalists, and both of those things have the same place. I think that's the kind of elements that will start to come through, undoubtedly. And I think I've seen some examples of like short films that have been entirely created by AI, and I think that is great. But I also think that there is always going to need to be a human touch to help it resonate with humans. And that's my personal opinion. We'll see how that pans out. I also thought that Threads was going to kill Twitter, and that doesn't seem to be the case. So,
well, I agree with you, and I think in this search for authenticity, we're kind of, I can go to an art gallery and look at painting, and it'll do something for me, and that's fine. And some people will say, well, that's all it's meant to do. It's how you perceive it and how you feel it and all that sort of stuff. But I love hearing where the idea came from, why, and the story behind it. And if the answer is, well, that's what the algorithm spat out, then who cares? But I want to know like the tragedy that led to the song being written and why,
who hurt you? Yeah. I get it.
Like that's where we come alive, don't we? To be known and seen and stuff. So I don't know how, and probably AI will get so sophisticated that it'll create some of those back narratives as well. but we're still going to know, I think, at some point. And even then, we're still seeing a slight rejection of digital. Vinyl's increasing, analog stuff is increasing. Like there's still something in the tangible stuff that we want, and I think we'll still crave it. So I think you're right. It'll be about us using it to augment stuff rather than replace.
I asked you earlier what was your favorite piece of work you produced. What is the most memorable or impactful story you've had the privilege to tell?
Yeah, I think so. Those of you who are not familiar with Manchester, in 2017, I think it was 22nd of May, we had a terrorist attack, and an Ariana Grande concert was attacked, and 22 people lost their lives. Countless others were affected, but out of that came a kind of beautiful response from this city, and in the creative community, we ended up doing a fundraiser, but using the words of a poet from Manchester called Tony Walsh, and we wrote this.
This is the place.
Amazing. Yeah, this is the place poem, and we gave a line of the poem to a different creative in Manchester, and created this book, and we raised something like £180,000, and Amazon fulfilled it for free. Waterstones fulfilled it for free, and it was just a stunning. We led it, but really everyone. The collaboration in the creative community was just gorgeous. It was such a beautiful thing to come out of something so horrible. But then a few months after that, probably a year after that, we got involved with the Resilience Hub, which was a NHS and a few other publicly funded bodies that were helping support the young people who'd been affected by that. And one of the pieces, a legacy piece they wanted to produce, was what they'd found was all these kids were dealing with various levels of trauma and PTSD. But most of the establishments they returned to after that gig didn't know how to handle it. And so, and so the purpose of this project was we would create an education tool for education establishments to support young people after mass casualty events. So it could be a road traffic accident, it could be a terrorist attack, it could be anything. And we got to spend time with probably 20 of these kids who were so brave, and they told their stories of what it was like at the time in the venue, and the first time they set foot back at school. And some of them, the schools were wanting to welcome them back, and so they'd created almost a welcome party, and then that's the moment the young person realized they were scared of crowds, or they wouldn't warn them there was a fire alarm, and that would trigger them. And so there's lots of these things, but they really bravely shared their stories, and we created this animation collaborating with them that they voiced, and it told their stories of recovery and how they accessed therapy and things like that helped. And it's become this tool that it went to New Zealand after the Christchurch bombings and stuff, and it's just kind of, I suppose, in terms of impact and in terms of getting close to some remarkable young people who've been through some remarkable events, I think it's a standout for us. And yes, it won awards and stuff like that, but the experience of being with and helping those kids articulate their journeys was a real privilege. It was an amazing piece of work for us. Yeah.
Nice. So as an agency lead, founder, creative director, what do you envisage DoodleDo's growth trajectory to be in the next 5 years?
you know, when you go on these like business courses,
Yeah.
and then they go, okay, would you get out your 5-year plan? You go, I'm not sure I have a 6-month plan right now, but the answer is I don't know, and I'm kind of unapologetic about that, because the way we've done, you know, obviously we have ideas, but the way I've always done it is to put the right people in the right room, and then to discover what's on our collective hearts to do, and then move the business in that direction. It's kind of been, and then we take opportunities as they come, and it takes us somewhere else. You know, we've met a couple of people recently that mean we're moving into some like programming stuff and broadcast TV show production, which and conception and all that sort of stuff, which I would have never thought we'd be getting into a couple of years ago. But because of the people we're meeting, it becomes a natural next step and a diversification of what we do. But it wasn't planned. It's just, it uses all our skill sets. It's exciting the people in the room, and we can do a really good thing with it. So I think for us, it'll still have some of that organic stuff, but there are things that, I'm excited about. We've been working with a brilliant client of ours, Luke Heron, who is a serial tech entrepreneur, and so he's always got a latest project for us, and it takes us into exciting spaces. So we've been doing all the kit launches for Hibernian Football Club, and we've actually become the first. I designed a sort of version of their branding for the shirt sponsors that incorporates a QR code. And so we think we've got the first interactive football sponsorship, which I don't know why everyone's not doing this, but if you scan the shirt, even on highlights, if you scan the shirt from a Hibernian match, then you get access to the sponsors page and fan content and highlights and competitions and all this sort of stuff. So it's just allowing us to play and innovate in sort of really interesting ways.
Do you remember when everybody used to laugh at QR codes? And I think QR
Yeah.
codes are the thing that actually won in COVID. Like that was the only good outcome from COVID was that QR codes got their time in the sun again.
Yeah, well, you had to download a QR reading app, didn't you? And that was the But then once they built it into the cameras, it was like, oh yeah, it's great. So it's
okay. I've got 3 questions left for you.
Okay.
I want the first one. I want you to like look back on some of your battle scars and war wounds. If somebody was wanting to start their own creative agency now, what advice would you give them?
Just
run can't be one of the answers. Yeah.
What's that?
Run can't be one of the answers.
Just make friends fast. Like I think the first few years, I was under the impression that if we did good work, then the work would find us. Like we were artists, and somehow
if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, we didn't need accolades, and we didn't need awards, and we didn't need people would find us, and actually we just all need a bit of help, don't we? So I think as soon as I started realizing that I hated the idea of networking because it felt like selling. And I'm not a salesman. But the idea of making friends who could open doors for you made much more sense, and I could open doors for them. So I'd say that, like, you're kind of only as people will have said it much better than I have, but you're only as good as your network. I don't even know if that is a phrase, but it is true that every opportunity you have is going to come from someone. So we did an exercise the other day and just put all our clients past and present on Post-it notes, and almost did join the dots and went, oh, that came from that, came from that, came from that, came from that. And I was saying to some of my guys who sometimes sit at the back of the room on shoots and don't really engage with the client, like, you don't know what room you're in with with, you know, or who their connections are, where your next opportunity is coming from. But so it would be that, just make friends and be like, help as many people as you can, and you probably find they're ready to help you when you need it.
I like that. I think on the same vein, I would say if I were to do it again, I think not being afraid to ask for help or advice would be key, because it is shockingly surprising how many people are more than happy, even if you compete with them, are more than happy to help you and tell you how they dealt with the problem that you're going through. I think I've been pretty good at it, but I think that would be the piece of advice I would give, like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Right,
I agree, and I think being, you know, I think you, on LinkedIn and Instagram and everything else, we present a certain way, don't we? And we don't want to show too many cracks, and we don't want anyone to lose confidence in us, and, you know, all of that stuff. But I also think you can't help someone who's got it all together. Like, what can I give to someone who knows everything? But when someone asks, then most people want to help, right? So yeah, I think that's a great shout.
I would much rather like a bit of honest content on LinkedIn than the thought leader tosh that is now prevalent. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's not go down that rabbit hole.
All right.
All right,
All right.
last real question. What's
Go
your
on.
biggest career fuck up to date?
Mine's probably not communicating with my business partner well enough. So we probably had very different whys, you know, like, and very different instincts. Like my instinct was to grow everything, and if that removed me from the day-to-day work, that was fine by me. I kind of enjoyed the process, and so we'd hire, like, when I hired people who were better than me, it wasn't a threat, you know, it was fine. But for him, his why was, I love doing the work. Like, I don't want to manage people to do the job that I always wanted. And in that void where we didn't talk about that or how to solve it, I feel like I created a vacuum, a void that that kind of resentment fell into, and difficult conversations fell into, and it became a bit of a toxic atmosphere for the team, really. And I don't really blame anybody but me. And so I just didn't really handle it very well. I knew instinctively that this should be addressed, but I avoided it at all costs because it felt too painful a conversation to have. And the upshot was a way more hurt than it should have caused. And a bit of a fallout in the end, you know. And I don't, you know, this is not about doing any dirty laundry, but other than to say, I just think I kind of wish I'd been less careless about spotting that, and it could have kept more people intact, because it was quite a painful then separation when it happened. And so, yeah, that'd be my biggest mess up by far. And I think I was under the illusion that it didn't affect the team. Like, they could operate under one or the other of us and feel safe enough, and it was fine, and that it was all happening here. But as I dove into what had been going on, and I realized it really was affecting everybody, and then it takes the joy out of the day, and like the fun out of the day, and that's when you do your best work. So I couldn't believe I was talking to people about my business when they were not wanting to come in the building. I was just like, this is crazy. Like, the whole point of us being here is to love what we're doing. And so, yeah, that'd be my biggest mess up.
That's an incredibly open and honest answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good, good, good insight. And like, I think so I've never had a business partner in Six and Flow, but it's one of those. I would imagine it is much like a marriage to a certain point. If you both got kind of your kind of desires and wants and needs, and then the team effectively children, and you then end up going through like unhappy marriage, divorce, separation. And I think dealing with that, and you obviously come through the other side of it because DoodleDo is very effective, but like is growing strong, and you're in a great place. But I think it's one of those things that like I can imagine that must have been an incredibly challenging time.
Yeah, it was, and I'm grateful that we resolved it amicably, and we did kind of leave everybody intact, not without a few wounds, but and then you start to be able to build in a way that sort of honors everybody a bit better, and then the joy comes back and all that stuff. So yeah, a massive learning curve.
Okay, last question. Who would you recommend I speak to next in the Six Sessions?
Ooh. Well, we run these monthly events for freelancers and friends, we call it. We've had some great people on that. So, but someone I've not spoken to yet, who I'd like to speak to. So if you get to speak to him, I'll just listen to yours. There's a guy called Torry, and look him up. He's founded an agency, sold it. Amazing backstory of sort of growing up in the UK in quite underprivileged background, and just a brilliant guy. I don't know him particularly, but I've met him a couple of times, and just one of those people where you're like, man, I love that story, and I love what's on your life and what you're doing, and so yeah.
Noted.
See if you can get Des.
James, thanks for doing the Six Sessions with me. If anyone wants to follow up with you, how do you want them to connect?
Oh, however you want. Like, I'm on LinkedIn. Search James Torry. There's hardly any Torrys, so you will find me. But yeah, connect LinkedIn. The door's always open. Come and grab a coffee or.
I've been reliably informed that it's an amazing office space, so I'm gonna have to come down at some point.
Yeah, we love it. So yeah, please,
James, thanks for joining us, and have a good weekend.
And
thanks, everybody.
Loved it. Thanks so much for having us.